Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. In wake of the tragic incident in which a Bengaluru Techie took his life accusing his wife of harassment and inciting him to commit suicide, here's a similar case that unfolded in Delhi in 2015 when an innocent man became the unfortunate victim of a woman resorting to abusing the laws to put him behind bars. Sarvjeet Singh was falsely accused in August 2015 of sexual harassment by a Delhi University student. The woman had posted a photo of him on Facebook and claimed that he had been eve-teasing her. Her post garnered widespread attention. Celebrities and politicians alike provided the woman with much support. Multiple media houses called him a quote-unquote pervert. And then the Chief Minister of Delhi, Arvind Kejriwal, also tweeted in support of the woman, calling it an act of bravery. Sarvjeet Singh was arrested on charges of sexual harassment the next day. He was also fired from his job a day after the Facebook post was put out. He had to make rounds of courts for 4 years. In the interim period, he was publicly shamed by people. What's interesting is that amidst all this, the woman who accused him of sexual harassment missed 14 hearings as she went to Canada for her studies. It was only in October 2019 that Sarvjeet was acquitted. The court observed that the testimony of the complainant was not trustworthy and cast serious doubts on the case of the prosecution. Gender justice is a real issue in India. Extensive legislation is in place to protect women from domestic violence, violence linked to dowry practices and rape. But what options do men have for justice in face of false charges? I'm going to start my conversation, and joining me on the telecast is Sarvjeet Singh Bedi himself. Sarvjeet, thanks for joining me on the telecast. And my first question to you about what happened in 2015. Do the scars still mar your life? The way you live, the indelible mark, a sour taste in your mouth that has left for perhaps an entirety of your life. Have you moved on? How do you tackle with the situation that took place at least a decade ago?
First of all, मैं अतुल सुभाष जिन्होंने रिसेंटली सुसाइड किया उनको श्रद्धांजलि दूंगा. इन द एंड देखा जाए तो भाई की हिम्मत टूट गई और उन्होंने सुसाइड अटेम्प्ट किया, जो कि गलत है. क्योंकि काफ़ी गर्ल्स ने जो मैट्रिमोनियल केसेस में होता है ना, अपना बिजनेस बना लिया शॉर्ट पीरियड में अर्न करना इन लैक्स और इन करोड्स. एंड जंप करे अगर मेरे केस के ऊपर कि जो मेरे साथ क्या केस हुआ, लड़की ने फॉल्स एलिगेशन लगाए मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग को लेके, एंड उसको टैकल मैंने कैसे किया. मैम, टैकल करने के लिए देखो आपको स्ट्रॉन्ग माइंड सेट होना ज़रूरी है. इंसान हारता कहाँ पे है? अपनी फैमिली को देख के, इमोशंस में आर के हारता है कि भाई मैं तो चलो मैं कल को सुसाइड कर लूँ या मैं स्टक रहूँ, मेरी फैमिली कैसे फेस करेगी, लोगों को कैसे फेस करेगी. एक इंसान, एक लड़का हो चाहे लड़की कोई भी हो, वो मरता है या डरता है वो सिर्फ अपनी फैमिली की वजह से कि उनको कैसे चीज़ें हैंडल करनी पड़ेंगी, जो कि काफ़ी टफ होता है. एंड अतुल सुभाष जी ने जो किया उसके पीछे उनका फैमिली, उसकी केयर थी, जो मैंने अभी तक जहाँ तक मैंने रीड करा. लड़की ने 1 करोड़ मांगे, फिर 3 करोड़ मांगे. एंड जैसे उनकी स्टेटमेंट, अगर वो सच है कि जज ने बोला कि आपके पास 3 करोड़ होंगे तभी वो डिमांड कर रहे हैं, अगर वो सच है तो जज का ये स्टेटमेंट भी काफ़ी रॉन्ग है, काफ़ी का पूरा कंप्लीटली रॉन्ग मैं उसको कहूँगा. एंड मेरी बात तो छोड़ते हैं क्योंकि पास्ट हो गया. रिसेंट में देखा जाए मेरे टाइम में भी काफ़ी पॉलिटिक्स इश्यूज हुए, पॉलिटिशियन इन्वॉल्व हुए, बट उससे हमारा जो एक एनवायरनमेंट है वो क्लीन तो नहीं हुआ. सबको हर चीज़ पता है. पीएम का मैं जंप करना चाहूँगा नरेंद्र मोदी जी के ऊपर. बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ. बेटी बच भी रही हैं, बेटी पढ़ भी रही हैं. बेटी पढ़ने के बाद वो इस तरीके से हरास कर रही है कि अपना बैंक बैलेंस बढ़ा सके, जो कि गलत है. हर किसी को सब कुछ पता है, बट कोई स्टेप लेना नहीं चाह रहा.
अच्छा सर्वजीत जी, आप यहाँ पे बताइए, आपके केस में और यहाँ पे हम इनके अतुल सुभाष के केस में भी बात करें तो ये जो उन्होंने एलिगेशन लगाया है, कहा है कि उनको इंसाइट किया गया अपनी टू किल हिमसेल्फ, अपनी जान लेने के लिए उनको हरास किया जा रहा था, उनकी मेंटल स्टेबिलिटी को डिस्टर्ब किया जा रहा था, वो अपने काम पे फोकस नहीं कर पा रहे थे, उनको एक्सटॉर्ट किया जा रहा था, crores of rupees were being extorted from him. यहाँ पे जब लॉस की बात आती है, किस तरह से उनको डिफिकल्टी हुई कि वो अपनी बात कह सके, कंप्लेंट पुलिस में फाइल कर सके, एक काउंटर केस बना सके अपनी वाइफ और उनकी फैमिली के अगेंस्ट, जिसमें वो बता सके कि जो उन्होंने उनके ऊपर इल्ज़ाम लगाए हैं, एलिगेशंस लगाए हैं, वो बेबुनियाद हैं, दे आर अनवारंटेड, और अपना केस एक बना सके, एक ठोस सबूत के साथ, एविडेंस के साथ बना सके। और उनकी दुर्दशा इतनी हो गई थी कि उनके पास एक लास्ट रिजॉर्ट रह गया था कि वो अपनी जान ले ले। वो ही कमिट सुइसाइड, एटलीस्ट एक एफआईआर दर्ज हो गई उसके कारण।
मैम प्रूफ का क्या होगा? जब कोर्ट में प्रूफ जितने मर्जी आप बल्क में प्रूफ भी दे दोगे ना, तो फेवर लड़की का ही लिया जाता है। हमारे लॉज ही ऐसे बने हुए हैं। मैं हूं अतुल की जगह पे, ठीक है, मुझे मल्टीपल लोग अपने माइंडसेट तक गाइड कर रहे हैं, मैं किस किस की सुनूंगा? मेरे माइंड में तो प्रेशर बना ही रहेगा ना। मैं एवरी डे वही चीज फेस कर रहा हूं जो अतुल भाई ने फेस किया होगा, जिसकी वजह से उन्होंने सुसाइड की है। तो इंसान का दिमाग इतने मल्टीपल वेज में नहीं सोच सकता जो वो सही डिसीजन ले पाए। कोई कहेगा प्रूफ जमा कराओ, कोई कहेगा प्रूफ से क्या होगा, ठीक है, प्रूफ का कोई वैलिडिटी नहीं होती जहाँ पे गर्ल स्टैंड ले रही है। तो यहाँ पे मेन है लॉस का चेंज होना मैम, दिस इज द मेन थिंग।
Talking about changing of laws, yes, there needs to be gender neutral laws, particularly when it comes to family matters. Is something that is much needed. You know, there's a void when it comes to family law, and when there is preference being given to women. पर यहाँ पे जहाँ पे ऐसा एक इंसिडेंट उभर के आता है जहाँ पे वुमेन हैरासर है, वो एक्सटॉर्ट करती हैं, वो मेंटल हैरेसमेंट करती हैं, वो फॉल्स एलिगेशंस लगाती हैं, रेप्यूटेशन को मार करती हैं, उसी जगह ऐसे हजारों केस हैं जहाँ पे विमेन को हरास किया जाता है, उनके साथ सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट होता है, डोमेस्टिक अब्यूज होता है, उनको जिंदा जला दिया जाता है, उनके डाउरी केसेस कितने हमारे समक्ष बाहर निकलते हैं, बाहर उभर के आते हैं। तो एक अफर्मेटिव एक्शन जो हमारे देश की औरतों के लिए लिया गया है, वो लेना तो जरूरी है, पर साथ ही साथ जो एक्चुअल विक्टिम्स होते हैं, चाहे वो वेदर इट्स अ वुमन और अ मैन, उनके साथ जस्टिस होना बहुत जरूरी है।
वेरी ट्रू मैम, वही तो बात है ना, जो इंसान एक्चुअल में गलत है, अगर कोई लेडी गलत है, वो गलत कर रही है, तो उसकी चक्कर में सारी गर्ल्स को ही वो चीज फेस करनी पड़ती है कि ये भी उसी नजर से देखा जाता है। अगर मैं कहूं कि आप हैं, ठीक है, एक एग्जांपल, आपने कोई फॉल्स केस किया, आपके साथ जो हो रहा है वो सोशल मीडिया पे फैला, बाकी गर्ल्स भी तो फिर वही चीज होती है ना कि भाई लड़की सही होने के बाद भी गलत ही होती है, कि भाई ये भी झूठी बोल रही है, ये भी पैसा ऐंठने की कोशिश कर रही है। इन द सेम वे बॉयज के साथ भी ऐसा है,
exactly.
लड़के हरास करते हैं जो इनोसेंट।
एग्जैक्टली द केस इन पॉइंट, आपसे बड़ा एग्जांपल कौन दे सकता है? राइट ओवर देयर, द फैक्ट दैट इट वाज अ मीडिया ट्रायल, and even the politicians, the former chief minister of Delhi could not resist himself from being part of that media trial, because despite
केजरीवाल जी का, देखो केजरीवाल जी को देखा जाए ना, वो भी एक इंसान है, एक ही माइंड है सोचने के लिए, ठीक है, जो सोचेंगे वही रिएक्ट करेंगे, वही एक्शन लेंगे। तो ये हमारे बस की बात नहीं है, प्रूफ्स के बात होनी चाहिए।
जी, एब्सोल्युटली। ऑन द फ्लिप साइड, जब हम देखते हैं कि हमारी फॉर्मर चीफ मिनिस्टर शीला दीक्षित थी, जहाँ पे एक रेप और मर्डर का केस हुआ था, और उन्होंने कहा था द गर्ल वाज आस्किंग फॉर इट बिकॉज शी वाज वेयरिंग अ शॉर्ट ड्रेस, बिकॉज शी हैड स्टेप्ड आउट लेट इन द नाइट, बिकॉज शी वाज नॉट accompanied by a male friend or a male person, a male with along her side, therefore she was quote unquote asking for it. So I think the politicians, public faces, public personalities, media houses, media personalities need to have restraint in the way they are talking about something, in the way they are projecting a particular case, an incident, because that causes a lot of turmoil, that could cause a lot of problems, and undue distress like you faced in that case that you did in 2015. Talish Ray also on the telecast with me, he's the senior lawyer. Talish, let's hear it from you. Now there are at this point of time demands being made that there needs to be a change in the way judiciary functions. There needs to be gender parity. There needs to be gender neutral laws, at least when it comes to laws related to matrimony. How do you view this?
So a couple of things that I would like to put in, so far as I was listening to Sarvjeet Singh ji, and I must commend him on a very balanced view that he has put forward. That when people misuse the law, what happens is that we like to have a knee-jerk reaction and portray everybody in the same way without looking at the human cost that is involved. And that is something that law must always keep in mind, because the basic principle in terms of rule of law is that we must listen to both sides. Right? So, odi alteram partem is a basic principle of law. And so far as this case goes and the allegation goes, and the general cry that is there that, the laws must not have any, they must be gender neutral. So, I'd like to know that would you like the dowry law to be made gender neutral? Because then I'd also like to know instances where dowry has been demanded or as a part of bride price and other things, right? As well as also a misunderstanding that is there that 498(8) currently continues to be powerful, because after the Arunesh Kumar judgment that has already come about by the Supreme Court, due caution is to be given, a preliminary investigation is to be done before a 498(a) is filed. Now, so far as the details of this case go, I think one aspect that definitely needs overhauling and needs greater clarity is there needs to be there needs to be a plethora. We have currently a plethora of laws, but there are certain things that are not settled. One, for example, what is not settled is, while the Supreme Court has recognized that parental alienation is the reality, and we see that operating far more with the father than we see that with the mother,
Yes.
simply because the mother is the primary caregiver. Parental alienation, for that there needs to be a set rules and laws that need to be followed with greater sensitivity, because we have this case itself where we have the deceased here, which is a very, very sorry case, where he's talking about Mr. Subhash's case, where he's talking about the first thing he actually lends light to is parental alienation. He's talking about his 4-year-old son and saying that, while I am, there is a maintenance, but I've also not met my child. Can you imagine the kind of cruelty that a parent goes through? Be it a father, be it a mother, in terms of not having the benefit of the company of their child, and the kind of damage it does to the child when they do not see a peaceful co-parenting that is in place. And that is one lacuna that is definitely there, where co-parenting in our judicial system is decided after the judges weigh as to what the child wants, what each of the parents want, and that gives them an opportunity.
Yes.
The second thing that I do want to point out is also this lack and lacuna that is there in the procedural element. So if you see the suicide note very carefully, they talk about how Mr. Subhash had filed for a video conferencing facility rather than having to go there personally, and that from the face of it, he alleges it was completely denied to him. Now, that itself is unfair, because if a person has to appear in court, then the person must be given a liberty in today's day and age of online court. Then there are various other procedural aspects. So there are two things that need to be understood here. One, are the laws bad, or are they being applied badly? Now, those are two very, very different aspects. And when we look at that, and it's very simplistic to say, oh, this is a problem, let's fix it like this. But let's look at it in the long term, in terms of how does it reflect back? What is it going to do? There is a need that when parties come into a matrimonial court, there is a need currently, because when the Family Court Act was passed, just way back, you look at in the 1980s when it was passed, there were far rarer instances of divorce. Currently, divorce is no longer treated as something that society shuns either of the parties from. And as a result, as the number of divorces increase, but at the same time, the mentality with which people approach it, there is a need for counseling for the parties, so that they understand what the laws are, they understand the repercussions of their decision. So in this case, allegedly, where the woman has filed these various petitions as well as complaints, and the police has taken it on record as well. And that is the kind of thing that there needs to be an aspect put in order to be able to take away the power of these agencies to play around with these laws and thereafter make them a tool for harassment for those that are not willing to sort of oil the system, so to speak, which is what he's talking about. He's talking about the system has failed him.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he says that the family court judge sitting in front of his wife has been mocking him, laughing at him, joking about his financial distress, and then proposing that if he give her the 5 lakh rupee bribe, she could settle the case and keep it aside. So, and then laughing on the comment of the wife that maybe it's time for you to commit suicide. So you know, and this is not about how the judiciary functions. It is not about how stringent or lack of therewith our laws are, but it is more about, you know, the porousness within the judicial system or the law and order system, where you are just able to get your way with simply by bribing the official or the judge or the lawyer.
Exactly, and that is something that needs to be sensitized. How can you say something like this? If these allegations are true, this is not the conduct that should have been brought about. You see, we have still not heard from the other side. We have not heard what may have gone on. Currently, these are the allegations that are there. But these are shocking allegations to suggest to a person that they should give up their life under whatever circumstances is not condonable. So, you know, this kind of pressure that is being built in a process which, by the way, is a mediation process, wherein the courts and the laws have been very clear that there must be utmost level of sensitivity towards both parties and to try and see that a speedy resolution takes place, whether it is by reconciliation or whether by the parties coming apart. So, you know, when I read those details, those are absolutely shocking. This is a misuse of something that has been given with a very noble purpose of allowing the parties a safe space to talk.
Right. Okay. All right. Nirmala Samant, Prabha Walkar also on the telecast with me. Miss Prabha Walkar, how do you view the situation where a woman has taken advantage, misused the law to denigrate the reputation of a man? Sarvjeet sitting over here, he was the victim of that false crime that was reported against him in 2015. It took him 4 years to get himself acquitted in the case. In the meantime, he lost his job, he's lost his reputation, he was shunned by the society, looked down upon, and called a sexual predator.
First of all, your voice is so less that I'm not able to hear you. Maybe that I don't have proper gadgets to put my earphone or something. But can you hear me?
I can hear you, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, it's very, very shocking, and the whole nation is under grief and shock to whatever has happened today to the techie who has committed suicide. So I really can't comment upon it. It will be too inhuman and very cruel on my part, though I am a woman activist. So all our feelings are with him and his family, and whatever has happened is very, very horrible and beyond any kind of explanation. That's number one. Number two is I will speak in general, because the laws are basically gender neutral, also women specific, because of certain circumstances which have been happening in a patriarchal society. And there are a number of reasons why the legislation has been made by the parliament. It is to give women a dignity. These legislations are made to see that a woman doesn't suffer. She doesn't have to beg to her parents and all that, and to give her financial security, social status, equal justice, equal laws and equal rights. But unfortunately, it has happened, and it has been happening, that there are women who have been taking disadvantage of it. The law is not for the women who take disadvantage of it. Because of such disadvantages and abuse of law, the genuine women who really are suffering a lot in a rural area, in urban area, in slums, and in the middle class family, lower middle class family, unnecessarily people feel that laws are only for women. Laws are not made for women. Laws are there to give equal rights, maintenance, financial security, not only to her but for the children also. So it's
Okay.
I can only say
Okay.
that
So
my
now how
other
do you
friend
view
Tanish
now at
was
this
saying
point of
that
time? Can you
he's
hear me,
right that
ma'am?
there is a mediation.
Okay, I'll try to let's try to
I'll
fix
tell
that
that.
audio problem with Miss Nirmala Prabhavalkar. Talish, I'm going to come back to you now. Do you think there is any space in our judicial system to bring about amendments and the legal recourse that men can take if they are faced with such kind of challenges, the ones that have been put forth in terms of the allegations that have been made by this Bengaluru Techie before he took his life?
So, on the face of it, first thing I want to clarify, any amendment in law that will need to be brought about will need to be brought about by the legislature. That's number one. By its own role, the judiciary can only lay down precedents, and that to the highest judiciary in terms of the Honorable Supreme Court. Now, so far as the current process goes, can the lower judiciary, which is under which the district judiciary under which the matrimonial matters typically reach, there is a lot of scope for improvement. If you look at in terms of how people are trained, whether they are trained toward to being sensitive towards the men and women who are going through what is by nature understood to be a painful decision. No matter how one views marriage, it is a very, very painful decision to have one's family torn apart. So, due sensitivity being followed is the number one criteria, and that can be done through training. The second is looking at things in a time bound fashion without acting upon a bias, which may either be a positive bias or a negative bias. So, those are the few things that are there. In terms of not just the judiciary, I must also point out that we as a legal community also owe a responsibility. We owe a responsibility as officers of the court to give advice which is correct. It cannot be so. When I refer back to Mr. Subhash's statement, and it's exceedingly sorry that he writes about how there have been multiple times he alleges that his estranged spouse made a statement saying she wasn't even aware that a case had been filed and the lawyer had done it on her behalf. Strictest of action must be taken, and that is where there has to be a robust redressal mechanism for these unsavory practices.
Okay,
Then let us
but
also look at the role of the
then
other
Talish, you
stakeholders.
tell
No,
me,
but
when there are these hawks who are roaming under the guise of lawyers and giving all sorts of malicious recommendations and advice to their clients, to get the maximum buck out of the case that they file against their partners, talking about giving sort of all sorts of reasons for why they want to get a divorce from their husband. It could be impotency, it could be they were unnatural sex, talking about domestic abuse, talking about sexual abuse. Now this how can this be tackled? Because the law may be all in favor, all may be equal for the man and the woman, but when there are these allegations made in the court of law and there is no real way of proving whether it is right or wrong, and then the decision goes in favor of the woman, how does a man safeguard himself from these challenges?
So, I think at some point in time, we also have to take into account the society that's there and also realize that we as lawyers are bound by the Advocates Act, wherein there is a specific code that is laid down for us. And one of those things is the fact that at no point in time, any lawyer who follows such a code and is principled will ever suggest that one should go to court with a lie in one's hand. That is something that we are barred by our own code of conduct. That is number one. Number two, there is a robust mechanism. Almost all of us are those of us that practice in the court are a part of a bar, and therefore we are under the jurisdiction of the bar council, and therefore if there is a feeling that there is a certain amount of miscarriage of justice that is there, I would encourage people to actually report against that. Having said that, I think we also need to look at ourselves as a society, because so very often people come in and say, this is the kind of thing, and I would like to see revenge, or I would like something to be done to be able to punish the other party. When we are looking at laws that deal with family relations, there is no question of
Okay.
things like there's no question of things like revenge, and that cannot be encouraged. If something doesn't work out, it doesn't
but
work
unfortunately,
out.
it's practiced widely. Anyways,
It is
okay,
practiced widely,
all
and
right.
therefore socially we need to remove
Yeah.
that feeling and concept.
Okay, all right. On that note, I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast and sharing your views on the subject. I'll take a quick short break. Thanks for watching NewsX.